Hello, welcome back. Today I want to show you how I make my exhausts for turboprop. So this is our goal for today, to make a pair of nice and shiny exhausts to fit the Zikhoi X45 turboprop engine. They are pushed onto the original exhausts of the engine and held by a clamp to give a nice and tight fit. They are a close push fit onto the engine exhausts, and we can undo them only by loosening this clamp so they can come off gently. So you can see there is a little slot on the back side where the two sheets are overlapping, and they are a close push fit to the engine, and all we have to do is retighten the clamp, and then they are strongly attached to the engine exhausts. So let's start making them. So these bows are from Zimmermann. They are 45 millimeters in diameter and they are 90-degree bows, but for a turboprop 45 degrees will be enough. But what we have to do is we need some straight extension to make them come out of the cowling. So what I will do is cut these in half, and then with a strip of thin stainless sheet I will add a straight extension. So for my plane and Joss's PC21 we need to add 25 millimeters on one side and 40 millimeters on the other side. So fortunately on eBay I found ready-made strips 25 millimeters wide. They are 0.3 millimeters in thickness, so exactly what we need. And here I have some 0.3 millimeters sheet to make the 40 millimeters, which I have to cut myself then. So I have drawn this up and I will cut them to size and then roll them to shape, and after that weld them to the bows. When you fix the exhaust onto the engine, you will also need a clamp, and because I didn't find the clamps I liked commercially available, I decided to make myself. So I designed these clamps. I will show you in detail later when we come to making those. And to make those, I made this little jig to drill the necessary holes, and they are made of stainless cable ties. So I've also found those on internet. They are 7.9 millimeters wide and 0.25 thickness stainless steel, so exactly what we need for that. So first I will cut the pieces to size what we need for the straight extensions. So when working with thin stainless sheet, it's always a good practice to wear gloves because the edges are very sharp. So I will cut this one to length and cut another strip here from my plain sheet. So I have this little tool which is very helpful to cut these kind of sheets. So you see how easy this is. For our extensions, the circumference of 44 millimeters, the diameter of the engine exhaust, we need 139 millimeters in length to get all around. And I added 3 millimeters to overlap. I have this tool which has two rollers with a step, which will make us a little step where the two edges will come to overlap. So I'll go on cutting this strip. So we have our strip. It has rippled a little bit here, but the hammer will take care of that. So here we have our strips. Now I will clean them up a little bit with sanding, and then we can go on with bending the edges. Now the edges are cleaned up a little bit, and we can use our rolling tool to roll them to shape. So they are looking nice already, more or less evenly round. So now we have to do the little bend on the edges for the overlapping. So I will have to do that in the vise. So now our extensions are almost ready. I have made a little step here on one edge where they overlap, so when tightening with a clamp they can easily slide and still you have a tight fit, although Mr. Bernoulli tells us no gases should come out because of the higher velocity inside, but it's good to have some overlapping. I did that with this little tool. It has two discs with a step on each side on opposite sides, and I just rolled them between these two rollers. It was easier to do it on the vise, so by turning them, and we have this little step. So now they are ready, and it looks like they are a nice fit onto the exhaust of the engine. So now we go on with the bows, as these are ready now. So here we have our bows, and I have built this little jig. Looks a bit like a puppet house or a bird house, but it is to make the center line where I will cut the two halves. I found it's not easy to do that center line by hand, so I made this little setup. I can simply put the bow inside and hold it like this. I have one wall here exactly at the center. I hope you can see that. So with the pen, while holding them in place, so this is a 90-degree angle, they should nicely fit in there. And now I can draw my line here following this wall. Now I turn it to the opposite side. And we should have a nice center line all around where I can cut it. So the other one. So again we have a nice center line to cut it. So again we use our gloves and we try to cut it. Weak battery, of course, always at the wrong moment. This one looks better. Okay, to have the same size, so we are okay. It's always a little bit tricky with these thin materials because you saw if the disc gets blocked, you have to always hold it quite tightly. Okay, so I need to clean the edges a little bit, and after that we will have to insert these extensions, and then they will go like this onto the engine. So a disc like this is just fine for deburring. Okay, finished. That's enough for now because we will have to clean the surfaces where we will spot weld the two parts together some more anyway. So this is okay for now. Now, before we come to the welding, I will prepare the clamps as well to be able to weld them all in one go. So now we have this jig. As I said before, these are stainless cable ties. They have just the right side we need, and they have clean edges, so they are almost ready to use. Now I have to drill the holes, one for the nut and the other one for the screw where it will go through the strip. There are two holes of each size on every side because the clamps will come to overlap and then will be bent to shape. So you can see here from one side it is going right up here under the screw and then back again under the nut up to this bend here. So the two ends will be overlapped and welded together and then bent to have this shape where the screw will tighten it together. So with this jig there is much less danger when drilling this thin material. It's always quite dangerous. So like this it's no problem because it's firmly held between these two pieces of wood. And I have already marked the edges because the length of this jig is exactly the length we need for the strap. So now drilling. For this stainless material, it's important that you have a good and sharp drill and drill with low RPM and a lot of pressure. Because once the drill would start slipping, the stainless steel will work harden and then you have lost. Now that the holes are drilled, I take it apart. And as I do two sets, I will insert another length of these strips. So here we are. And we have four nice holes. And now we can cut them. A simple old Tupperware scissors will do for this thin sheet. And then insert them again for the next pair. So, and on the drill press. So, and not forget to draw the lines where to cut them before opening the mold. You may have been wondering why I drill two different sizes of holes. One is 3 millimeters for the screw to pass, and the other one is 4.6 to insert a special nut. I am using these special nuts which are made to be inserted into sheet metal and then they will hold themselves in place. And while I am spot welding the two sheets together, the two sides, I can also put a spot on the nut itself to make sure it really stays where it should. So here is my spot welder. It is by far oversized for the job we are doing, but I got it from my friend Paul, who used to run a restaurant, and already his father had bought this to repair his kitchen tools. But for our needs, I had to downgrade it. It was intended for 400 volts input, and now I have modified it for 230 only, and still the current was way too much. So I have added these extensions, and I'm using only 3mm tungsten electrodes from a TIG welder. So it does a really good job. The only thing you have here, you have a knob to adjust the timing. Inside there is only a big relay, and the transformer is in here, so probably it has a certain number of windings on the input side, and on the secondary probably only 1 or 2 windings to give a high current with a low voltage. So, but before we can spot weld, we have to clean all the surfaces where it will be spot welded, because there is some grease or oxide or so. So this is a heavy bugger. We first have to clean all the surfaces where we will weld. I am using these Dremel kind of brushes. They do a good job. They are slightly abrasive, but do not take off too much material. As I said before, it's better to use gloves when working with this kind of material. I will overlap the 2 pieces by 3mm, so a little bit of cleaning on the edge will be enough. And the same for the strips. I have marked the sides, which I have to clean. Now comes the tricky bit, to weld them exactly at the right size, so that they are a nice fit onto the exhaust of the engine on one side, and that they can easily be inserted here, where they will then be spot welded all around. I want to insert them by 3mm into the bows, so I have to mark 3mm all around. Okay, so here we go for the weld. Okay, yes, we have power. So now first will be to see approximately the diameter where it has to be welded. Then we make a single spot, because a single spot you can undo it if it's not just right. You can undo it just by twisting, but you will not be able to tear it apart. So it's done. Okay, this fits nicely, so now it has to fit onto the bows. Now it all depends on how accurate the diameter of the bows is. So here I will have to chamfer them just a little bit. As well as here on the seam, it is doubled, so I grind this flat a little bit. I have chamfered them a little bit to be able to get the bows on. So there it will be quite a press fit and not easy to push them on. So I think this time we will manage. It's really a nice and tight fit. Here we are. So number 3, one more to go. Here we are, a little too far, but it will probably come out too much and jump out again. No? Seems to be okay now. So here we have 4 of them. Now time to weld them before they jump off again. So now, will it still fit on the engine? Okay, so it's a nice fit. Afterwards there will be the clamp all around, and then it should be okay. So that was the most difficult part so far. Now I will go on spot welding them all around, and then we will be done for this part. So now the last one welding is finished. You can check the fit. And it goes on nicely. So now we have 2 complete sets of exhausts, and now we come to the clamps. They have to be assembled in a certain way. So for the first welding spots I center them with the drill. Now I weld only 4 spots per clamp, and afterwards the nut will be inserted. Okay, so here we are. Now I will re-drill the holes for the nuts to insert properly. And now the nuts to be inserted, and afterwards I can also spot weld them. Now I will insert them in the vise and then go on with welding. Now the nuts are inserted, and in addition to being pressed, I add some welding spots. Okay, so now one side is welded, and now they have to be bent in a certain way. Now I insert the drill for the other part to be welded. We have to finish bending and check the fit. As I said, they have to be bent in a certain way, and hopefully after that we can insert a screw. And now we have to check if the size is right. and now it's firmly held in place and nothing is bending of the clamp, not like the ones you can buy. So I'm happy with this. I will finish the other ones. So once finished, spots here are not really flush. So you can, if you wish, grind them a little and maybe polish them afterwards. So nice and shiny, ready to go for good onto the engine and fly. Just another word about the spot welding. This is by far the simplest way of welding and it works every time. You don't need any gas or it's not noisy or whatever. And if you want to give it a try, I've seen on eBay that you can get small spot welders for €100 or even less. Most of the knowledge I have about this spot welding comes from nearly 20 years ago when I was a member of the GTBA, the Gas Turbine Builders Association. And there were a lot of interesting articles, people who had tried lots of things. And also for spot welding, it was quite popular at that time to use transformers out of old microwave ovens. Or even at the time, Robbie, I think, had in their program a small spot welder, which is absolutely enough for the thin sheet we are using here. So, if you like, give it a try. And I am happy that I can do these myself without having to look for shops who are doing normally not exactly what we need. So yes, many of my projects wouldn't have been possible if I couldn't have done these exhausts myself. So see you in the next video. Bye bye.